But if we're ready, we can just get started. And I'd like to just kick off the session by welcoming everyone and thanking you for joining us for the next edition of ServiceNow Ask the Experts. My name is Roz Morville, and I'm Product Marketing Manager for Risk and Compliance for ServiceNow. And in this session, we're going to talk about some recent enhancements to our VRM offering. And then we'll talk with our partner, who we're really excited that could join us today, EcoVadis. And we're going to learn about a little bit about their integration to ServiceNow and understand a little bit about what they're seeing in the marketplace today, and how actionable insights and ESG, risk intelligence, and continuous monitoring can be realized within your own VRM program. So Daniel's going to give us some perspective on the market as EcoVadis sees it today. We're planning on going for about 30 minutes. Before I introduce your speakers, let me just remind you of a couple of upcoming sessions that are happening in our risk space. So we've got later this week, learning about policy and compliance management. And then next week, we're going to have a session on business continuity management. Both of those sessions will be in the community, so you can sign up there. If you do sign up, you'll get the recording afterwards, and they're also available for play on our YouTube channel. We've had several sessions throughout March and into April. So if you're looking for something, definitely just check in the community and search there, because they'll all be updated and available for you to listen to there. So we've got a couple of topics to talk about. But first, let me introduce you to our speakers. Many of you are probably familiar with Jorge Garcia. He's been in the security and risk space for several years, serving in a variety of roles with an array of clients providing security, identity, third-party risk, and operational risk solutions. And as one of the early users of SOAR tools, Jorge strongly believes that workflow can be embedded in all aspects of security and risk to help reduce attack vectors and mitigate risk factor. And he's been succeeding to that end as the principal product manager of our VRM solution to date. So welcome, Jorge. And also joining us from EcoVadis is Daniel Perry. And Daniel is the Global Alliances Director for EcoVadis, which operates the first collaborative supply chain sustainability rating platform. And his main focus is on developing alliances with worldwide software leading vendor developers. And Daniel has more than 20 years of experience in business development for innovative solutions for procurement organizations. And he's been a guest speaker at events such as the Institute for Supply Chain Management, NASDAQ Innovation Lab, the Sustainability Procurement Leadership Council, and the United Nations. Daniel originally comes from New Zealand, but he currently resides in the San Francisco Bay Area. So welcome, Daniel. And with that, I'll pass this to Jorge, who's going to get us started.
All right, thank you, Ross. And thank you everyone who took the time to really listen to us today. So today we're gonna go through kind of what the new release or the latest release of our vendor risk management solution. And I'll walk you through some of the more notable features and functionality of this release. The release became available about 2 weeks ago, and it's associated to what at ServiceNow we consider to be our San Diego release. So a couple of things that I'll touch on before I pass it on to Daniel at EcoVadis is first, we are expanding our partner ecosystem. You would have seen that started last year, and then this year we are continuing really this aggressive expansion into other risk domains and other potential partners that we can provide data in order to better automate the risk assessment process, in order to better inform you as you make decisions on which vendors or suppliers you onboard or choose not to onboard, and then subsequently which actions you're going to take in order to mitigate that risk. We're also going to talk a little bit about fourth-party management. This is a feature that we've released also in San Diego alongside one of our customers. And so we had customers help us in being able to design this functionality, being able to pilot how the features, how the use of the functionality should be used. And if you are a current customer, please feel free to reach out as we can build really cool things together. And then finally, we are continuing our journey to make sure that our solution and really the ServiceNow platform is modern. It's intuitive and really provides the best user experience, right? And so we started this journey last year with what we're calling the vendor management workspace, very modern UI, and we've also incorporated that into the San Diego release. As I said, it's a journey, right, not a destination. And so in San Diego, you will see some further enhancements to the UI, the UX in general, and then you could continue to see that throughout the upcoming releases across the many features and functionality that we release. So with that said, I'll start with the integrations. First, we've already had a very similar session with Interos about how they're able to bring in that data to ServiceNow. And then if you want to take a look at here, there's the link that Ross was kind enough to put there. And you can, feel free to reach out to us if you want a little bit more information. And if you want to get a little bit more context as to what type of data points they provide. Today, we're talking with EcoVadis, and we're very excited about this partnership because we keep hearing about ESG as a top of mind issue that the board of directors and C-suites are discussing, specifically when it relates to supply chains. And so being able to integrate with leading service provider in this particular space is extremely exciting for us, and we hope that it provides a lot of benefit and value to you. And then finally, we rely on the SIG for one of our standard assessments that we offer out of the box. And so as they continue upgrading their content and refreshing it with newer questions based on what they're seeing out there in the wild in terms of security, or they're getting feedback from customers, we're also refreshing this on a yearly basis. I'm going to move on. I don't see any questions, and Ross, feel free to please interrupt me if there are any. I'll move on to fourth party management. This is a feature, as I mentioned, in which we participated with a current customer to design the capability, to gather requirements, and then finally to also test how it should be used and would be used in a real life deployment. The problem, I think it's pretty straightforward, right? Supply chains are complicated, whether it's a digital supply chain or a physical supply chain, and understanding the point of failure or the point of weaknesses is really important, as we've seen with a lot of the different events that have occurred in the past 2.5 years. And so our customers are interested in trying to map out their supply chains, again, digital or physical, and then B, they're trying to understand those single points of failures and then be able to respond to it, right? And so fourth parties is really the beginning of that journey to be able to plan ahead and then also to respond for any potential disruptions, which as we've starting to see, is not a matter of if, but rather a matter of when. And so what we've done for this particular particular feature is we've taken this approach in two different phases. The first phase is what I'm going to show you here is the ability to first go through a segmentation or categorization step of your vendor population to understand and define your most critical third parties. And then you're going to send out a questionnaire to identify the fourth parties through kind of right to audit clauses that are embedded in contracts, right? And what that will give you is your most critical fourth parties. And the way that we'll visualize in the product is first, who are the known fourth parties? A known fourth party is what we're saying. It's a fourth party, but it's also a third party. And so you will have a good understanding, hopefully, of their security posture, their ESG posture, their anti-bribery, anti-corruption posture, and be able to have a good understanding of what that fourth party means within your supply chain. And then we have this other concept of an unknown fourth party, right? And so what we've discovered through this pilot is that there was one particular entity, one particular company that they realized had a large concentration in their third party population, and they had absolutely no clue what they did. And so being able to identify that particular vendor or that particular entity then led them to do a little bit more research and understand what the impact of that that relationship meant to them. We do have a second phase coming up, and you'll see that hopefully the next time that you meet with us. The second phase is how do we introduce both AI and ML as well as content that comes from either a content provider or from contract information to then be able to map out beyond fourth parties, right, in an automated fashion where we're really drawing the entire supply chain rather than relying on assessment information, right? And so feedback we received is that is the future, but right now there is no single solution out there or content provider out there that gives you that information, right? And so what we're going to do is continue to do research and expand on this fourth party management capability. And then last but not least, before I pass it to Daniel so he can talk a little bit more about EcoVadis, is just showing you a quick preview of the latest San Diego UI. And so as I said, we've completely revamped our user experience from 2 years ago till today. And then from last year until today, you'll also see changes, right? Key changes that I think will be extremely useful is you now have the ability to have your filter navigator embedded within a workspace experience, right? And so prior to this, workspaces kind of were isolated and it was hard to shift between workspaces and kind of the legacy UI. But if you were to click on here on all, then you would see your filter navigator pop down and navigate to A, and any other workspace, or B, any other page within your ServiceNow platform. We've also introduced this task page, right? So this is a work queue that allows you to view all the different activities and tasks that you need to perform. We've also, this is part of the previous workspace, but it's just a newer theme and newer user interface. And then as you may be familiar with our 360 view, which gives you kind of full context of what is happening with a particular vendor in terms of, their scores coming in from partners like EcoVadis, their issues, assessments that are in flight, as well as any engagements that you have with them. So with that said, I will pass it now to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Jorge, and nice to meet everybody. So we'll go on to the next slide. So EcoVadis, we're a leader in sustainability ratings. So we provide a robust platform to connect global companies and allow for sharing of data across supply networks with a focus on ESG, sustainability, CSR. There's a few different ways you can call it. We refer to it as sustainability because it's sort of a catch-all term. If you just want to hit spacebar on that one, Jorge, and we'll go on to the next slide. Great. So just a quick summary. We've been doing this now for 15 years. And we've compiled the largest database of sustainability ratings. We rate companies of all sizes, but we are focused on rating predominantly suppliers. So we work with 750 large multinational companies who are assessing their suppliers in predominantly tier 1 across 4 different themes: environment, labor and human rights, ethics, and sustainable procurement. We cover pretty much any industry, and we've got a pretty broad geographic presence as well. So on to the next one. The way that we define sustainability is under these 4 themes: environment, labor and human rights, ethics, and sustainable procurement. You might hear terms ESG, so that stands for environment, social, and governance. Or CSR, corporate social responsibility. We're looking at sustainability through the lens of business to business and trading partners. So it's really about what are the risks and potential opportunities for performance in sustainability when dealing with that context. And our methodology is aligned with global best practice. So these 21 criteria make up our sustainability methodology, and depending on the size, location, or industry of the company that we're assessing, the materiality can be different. So certain areas might be covered, certain areas may not be applicable, certain criteria may have a heavier weighting than others. On to the next one. And for the buyer community, we provide a suite of intelligence solutions. So we're looking at risk mapping to understand the high-level hotspots of where you should be focusing your rating campaigns. Our sustainability ratings is sort of our core solution, and then we have the modules of carbon action for those that want to dive deep on carbon in their supply chain, EcoVadis Academy for both buy side and supply side to improve their knowledge on the sustainability issues at hand, and program management to help customers through the internal and external marketing of their programs, onboarding and so forth. On to the next one, thanks. So when it comes to supply chain due diligence, there's a framework that we follow. So we're looking at risk assessment, verifying the risks, and then mitigating and monitoring and or disclosing the performance against that risk. On to the next one. Okay, and these are some of the worldwide regulations that are related to supply chain due diligence. So even though this is a North American presentation, I'm based in California, a lot of large American companies are facing international regulations that they're now having to adhere to or be ready for, such as the new Supply Chain Act in Germany, for example. Some may have already been reporting or disclosing against French law around supply chain due diligence and duty of care. And even in North America, there's been some activity. So there was previously, China had already been upgraded to a tier 3 in terms of modern slavery. So, being able to show that your products are not coming from an area that has modern slavery was already part of current law. Then the Trade Enforcement Act made it so that goods could be stopped at the border if it was deemed to have come from a place that has modern slavery. Now they've gone a step further by singling out the Uyghur portion of China with the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. So because of all of these similar competing regulations, trying to manage your suppliers on a country by country basis just really isn't the best way to go about it. What you need to do is sort of have preparedness to be able to have your suppliers as clean and modern slavery free and environmentally friendly as possible, or at least have them driving towards that. So there's different types of regulations worldwide. There's due diligence, disclosure, and then some where it's mandatory due diligence and disclosure. And it's that third bucket that is getting folks most concerned, because you're not only needing to say publicly that you're against modern slavery, or you're against having a large carbon footprint or what have you, but you also need to provide evidence that you're tracking or at least researching what's going on in your supply chain, and then have actions and show that you're taking action to mitigate that. But the good news is, with EcoVadis, we're helping customers take care of that problem. So again, just to summarize, we're helping with identifying the risk, assessing the risk, preventing and corrective actions, and monitoring and reporting. So on to the last one. So how do we do it? Well, one is first of all, we're integrated into your preferred solutions like ServiceNow. So the suppliers that you want to go after, we know who they are because you're feeding them directly from your system. So you might have triggers and that sort of thing in ServiceNow to kickstart that process. And once that process does kickstart, what we're looking at is, for any individual supplier, we're assessing the materiality by industry, country, and size. And every supplier receives some form of customized questionnaire, so they feel like they're being asked questions that are relevant to them. We assess them based on third-party inputs, company management systems, and we have a catch-all 360 watch where we're looking at thousands of different news sources and NGOs, government websites, and so forth. And then the assessment is done by humans. So we have over 200 sustainability experts that look at that evidence-based assessment. And eventually all of their assessing rolls up into their scorecard. And the scorecard is really clean, easy to read. It's exactly the same document that you're looking at, that the supplier is looking at, and it's available in multiple languages. The cool thing about integration with ServiceNow is we can actually take those data points from the scorecard and plug them straight into your dashboards and your supplier profile views and so forth within the tool that you're using all the time, so you're not needing to swivel chairs.
Yeah, but just to add to that, so there's a couple of things. The first is we do have the ability to request a new questionnaire in EcoVadis directly from ServiceNow. And so if you did, onboard a new vendor and there's a need to understand their ESG posture, we can reach out to EcoVadis and bring in the assessment. But if we do not find an existing assessment, then we could request for an assessment to be performed, which is essentially this process that you see here on the screen. The second thing is once the assessment has been performed, they give you an overall score, but they also give you the 4 themes that they capture. And we have the ability to not just capture the overall score, we now have the ability to also capture those themes and then aggregate those scores and roll them up to calculate the final risk rating for that particular vendor, right? And so we'll show you how it's essentially broken down by the risk area, the risk domain. And then again, seeing those 4 thematic scores. And then of course, a link to the NICE report that is shown on the right-hand side, so that if your end user is very familiar with what this report looks like, we give you the ServiceNow look and feel, but we'll also kind of provide you with the EcoVadis report that brings in additional information and context that may not necessarily be passed over from the integration. So with that said, I do see 2 questions. So I'll go ahead and now we'll move on to the questions. I think the first one was from Ashik, which was, do we have the ability to perform assessments in bulk? And there has been a need to do this either through Log4j or the vulnerability of what's happening today in Ukraine. And so we do have this scoped and it's part of our roadmap. We are going to call it campaign management, and it's not going to be just limited to the ability to send out vendor risk assessments. It's going to be the ability to contact a subset or your entire supplier population based on criteria, and then the ability to perform different actions, right? And so it's not just risk related. If there is an improvement initiative, right, or if there's a zero carbon green initiative that you want all of your suppliers to start following, you can create a campaign to track that improvement initiative and then say, hey, let's work and collaborate together to reduce our carbon footprint. The second question is from Monica, and it's would the vendor access the assessment from the ServiceNow portal, or do they have to access a separate system with a separate login and password? So what we are doing in this first phase is, if you are the vendor themselves, they do have the ability to come into our vendor portal from ServiceNow, but they would not see the assessment responses from EcoVadis, right? We do think that there's that's added value, but not necessarily the main result or the computation that's coming in from these sustainability experts. And so what we're bringing in is the final computed score alongside the themes. And so if the supplier wanted to see their EcoVadis assessment score and assessment data, they would need to be logging into the EcoVadis vendor supplier portal.
There's also a question in the Q&A portion there, Jorge, and I think that one's directed for you as well.
Okay, so there's one more. Are there any updates in regard to the whistleblower functionality? So for this one, I think it's based on that slide where Daniel showed the different regulations. we are hearing whistleblowing as first a key component of the German Supply Chain Act law, and I'm sure others will follow suit. And so we do not have whistleblower functionality in the ServiceNow platform. We are working with a couple of partners that have whistleblowing functionality. Whistly is the one that we're working with. And then with this is also something that is in our roadmap because it's not just related to supply chains and sustainability acts or sustainability data. It's also something that we want to introduce as part of our IRM portfolio, just so that if they do see a control failure and they're wanting to remain anonymous, this whistleblowing thing is something that is in our scope and our roadmap across our entire IRM portfolio. There's a question for you from Monica, Daniel, where they're asking, is the vendor responding to any questions? I'll answer it from the ServiceNow perspective. From the ServiceNow perspective, they are not, but they do, I believe, need to answer questions within the EcoVadis ecosystem.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the process there?
Yeah, sure. So when a supplier is invited to go through the sustainability assessment, the first thing they do is they register. So we validate exactly who they are, where they're located, how many employees they have, what industry they're in, and so forth. Then a questionnaire is generated for them, which is unique based on our massive question data set. So what they end up with is something that is enough questions, I'd say. So we want to make sure that we keep it relevant, but also give them the opportunity to show what they're doing over and above what's expected of them. Because remember, our ratings is a performance rating, not a compliance or risk score. The vendors will access the EcoVadis questionnaire. That whole process is completely separate from ServiceNow for good reason, because it's been 15 years in the making and is quite complex. So we're not rebuilding all of those questions and stuff in other platforms. But in terms of the buy side look and feel, user interface is all very seamless.
Yep. And then the cool thing is that they only complete the assessment once. For customer X, and then have the ability to expand. So I think, Monica, you're saying like you've seen that in other kind of applications and tools, and it's very, very similar to that, right? It's almost an assessment exchange in that capacity.
Yeah, one of the things that we focused on when we set up EcoVadis was to make sure that there was a lot of value in it for the vendors. So with their, as opposed to cyber, right? No one really wants to talk about what their cyber risk score is. And we know we have a sister company that does cybersecurity ratings. But with sustainability, once a company achieves their sustainability assessment, once they achieve their rating, it's something that they may want to promote. So through our platform, they can share scorecards with whomever they want, and via the integration with ServiceNow, many of the suppliers that customers would be accessing would be suppliers that have already achieved their scorecards. And I get where you're coming from. Too many systems, too many logins. The solution to too many standards is always another standard, right? But again, we are the de facto standard for sustainability ratings. We've been doing it for 15 years. And really what we were addressing was the too many different ways of measuring what is sustainability. And as you saw from our methodology, we've got 4 different themes, 21 different criteria. Someone coming to you and saying, I just want to ask a question directly to you, vendor, about your diverse hiring practices. And then someone else comes and says, but I just want to know about your greenhouse gas emissions. And then someone else says, I just want to know about if you're ethically hiring people within your organization. And so what we've done is put all of those different themes together and put it into one sustainability rating. Monica, I'd love to have a chat with you offline, because it sounds like you've got a lot of great ideas on this topic.
That'd be great. So the other question follow on to that was, do you need to have a subscription to EcoVadis, or how does that work? So just a little bit of detail there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can put in the chat the link to the store, because there was a question on how do you get this. So accessing that would be in the link.
Yeah, great. So because EcoVadis is like a programmatic approach, we're helping customers with their essentially their sustainable procurement programs, so helping them with internal marketing of it, external marketing of it, and then ongoing program management as they're engaging with their suppliers and onboarding new suppliers. So therefore, it is an enterprise level implementation. So you do need to have an EcoVadis program in place to be able to take to get the benefit of being able to integrate with ServiceNow. But as you can see on the ServiceNow store, there's links you can go through to get a referral off to an EcoVadis account executive who can talk with you about our plans and programs.
Great. So Monica, if you want to share your contact details with me, I can get that over to Daniel. That'd be great. So we're coming up on, yes, one more question. Yep, sorry.
So, any plans to integrate with sourcing procurement processes? And we do. And so we did release a solution or an application called Procurement Service Management that's part of the ServiceNow portfolio. But of course, we know that not everything is going to be done in ServiceNow. And so we are also looking to create integrations to some of these sourcing and procurement processes. You will find some already exist as part of what we call the Integration Hub. And so the Coupas, Aribas of the world, you will find as an existing spoke that we can already connect and integrate with. And we're also expanding that. So that Integration Hub, we have, I believe, over 250 different integrations to different systems.
Great. So for additional resources, we just put a few links up there so that you can be accessing those. As I said, in the community will be this recording as well as past and future Ask the Expert sessions. Those are also available on YouTube as well. So thank you so much for your questions. Really insightful. Monica, we will definitely follow up with you. Thank you for sharing your details. And if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to contact us here or definitely, your sales rep is always available. But thank you so much, Daniel, Jorge, for your time. It's really exciting to be at the forefront of the ESG market. And I know you guys are doing amazing things. So thank you for partnering with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.